We go. Good evening, you fucking legends. I was trying to pull off the Rick and Morty when they split all the universes, and away we go. And he hits the button, but one of them was doubtful, so it expands into more like possible opportunities. Missed the mark a little bit, I'm sure. As always, we've got a lot to talk about today. Sex sells, but Disney doesn't want any part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like Spider-Man might have won an Oscar or been nominated for Best Picture if they just bumped their game up just a little bit, right? We have a massive conversation about the Hall of Fame or Hall of Shame potentially. I know you're chomping at the bit to get those takes out, but we started talking about it a little bit. I said, "Shut up! Let's leave it all out on the battlefield." American tradition. Today was National Pizza Day. We might be the only country celebrating National Pizza Day, if I had to guess, because that's what Americans do.
USA.
Anything that's going to clog that is the sound of a hellhound in the background. I apologize.
Hey, we fucked up. It's National Pizza Day. Yeah. All right.
The Oscars are here. They're releasing all of the nominations per category. We'll talk about that a little bit. Did some people get snubbed? Is everything just like an artsy kind of film deal that ends up winning these?
Don't get me started on Don't Look Up.
Right. I haven't watched it yet, but I can't imagine it was better than Spider-Man.
The cast is and the premise looks so promising, but it's all about calling attention
political.
It's calling attention to global warming by pretty much bashing Republican point of view like the entire way through it. It's just like I don't get why we have to do that. Like it would have been so good, but go on.
Right. Shaun White making his last Olympic return. He says after this he's hanging it up. 35 years old. He's in the qualifying round, so we'll see how he's doing, but we'll talk a little bit about how many redheads are going to be left in the spotlight at this point. Learning to walk again. We talked about how you couldn't repair severed spinal cords, but that seems to not be the case. We're learning to walk again even after severed spinal cords.
Because if we can reattach spinal cords, we could potentially fix everything with like neurology in general, like seeing blind people. Like people who are blind or who become blind, we might be able to fix that now because we understand how the neurons work. Who knows? Crazy world. Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. This must be the technology from the aliens we've been spouting off about for the past, 68 episodes. By the way, episode 69. Nintendo is absolutely crushing it right now. They're going to have, I want to say, a 40-minute montage of what is supposed to be coming out this year for the Nintendo Switch. Seems like a lot for me, and maybe they're going to show some gameplay and chew up some of that time, but that's wild. Nintendo, kudos to you.
Fun fact about that too, I was talking to Griff earlier and we were looking at the new PlayStation, the new Xbox, right? Well, the Nintendo Switch has sold significantly more than both.
What is up with that? Is it just because the demand? Yeah.
Or maybe they just don't have enough to pump out too. Because
that was my thought. Is the demand for the chips all of a sudden skyrocketed? Basically anything microchip related, there was all these delays on it. So maybe PlayStation and Xbox had this initial release of some of that stuff, and now we're having issues with producing them because we don't have that kind of internal technology. But you would see the same thing for the Switch at this point as well. So if there was going to be a dip, it would be in all of them, you would think.
Well, unless those chips aren't used in the Switch because it's a smaller system, you don't have to use the graphic power. And now what I did see here, I heard something about like speculation is that's because of all the cargo ships and stuff that are held up in California because of I believe they're in a state of emergency. So I asked you this. How in the hell can they host the Super Bowl?
I'm glad you said that. I came across that yesterday too. Yeah. And I was ready to fire that into the group chat and see what sort of conversation was going to pop off because of it. But exactly, that's exactly the point.
Yep.
So you're telling me you're going to have tens of thousands of people filling up a stadium that is in the city, that is in a state that is under a state of emergency. You can see what I did there, how we got there.
And these people are from all over the country, potentially all over the world that come to watch this game. So
exactly.
What? Like, come on now. You gotta be smart about it.
And last but not least, Russell Crowe joins the cast of Kraven the Hunter. I was kind of skeptical about their casting choice with Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays Kick-Ass. He plays Quicksilver in one of the iterations of Quicksilver, I should say, in the Marvel universe. Now he's going to be Kraven the Hunter, which good for him. I think people liked him. I think he was a fan favorite as Quicksilver. And it looks like it's going to be good. I'm sure he's going to bulk up for this role and knock it out of the park. It's going to be interesting to see how they tie that into Spider-Man, where this is going to go. I like the idea of villains getting standalone movies.
Well, yeah, it allows you to connect more with the villain too. I mean, that's one of the reasons Thanos was so appealing to us, is because we got a lot of Thanos in little bits throughout time. But if you give them their own movie and you do it right, I mean, I think Sony and Marvel are going to split off into their own two separate universes at some point, but where Tom Holland is going to be in both and just be like, hey, this has nothing to do with this.
Tom Holland is the liaison that they need between all this turmoil, and he's just like, whoa, hold on, wait, hold on, easy. Let's make 10 more Spider-Man movies. Disney, you get a majority of the profits. Sony, you get to ride off the coattails of Disney. Let's all just go ahead and agree and be done with it. And then Tom Holland gets to go, I'm going to do a little bit of Sony money. I'm going to do a little bit of Marvel money. I'm going to do a little bit of Sony money. I'm going to do a little bit of Marvel money.
The world is his oyster at this point, because if he pulls off, I haven't seen the new Uncharted movie. I don't even think it's out yet. But if he pulls that off and that's a hit, that just shows that he can go out and do other movies too that are kind of outside of that realm. Because, I mean, the Spider-Man, he's a young kid, that sort of thing. But according to the games, I don't know how they're going to spin it, but that character is more like a grizzled adventurer type, you know. So it's I'm intrigued.
Did just start playing Uncharted 4 again in anticipation for that movie to come out. Don't know if I'll go see it in theaters, but one I'm interested in for sure. Mm-hmm. And the Nathan Drake character, I mean,
absolutely.
And in that one, they do callbacks to when he was in an orphanage or like a foster home, and he keeps sneaking out with his brother to find these little clues and everything in order to understand. Oh, here's this map, here's this treasure. Let's do this thing. Boom, let's make ourselves rich, and let's learn a little history on the way. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of.
I'm excited to see him. I don't like remastered editions. But I have found that long series games like Uncharted 1, 2, 3, 4. Uncharted 4 was like cutting edge stuff for what they were doing at the time. But 1 and 2, if you go back and play them now, you're like, this sucks. But they're going to actually remaster all of them for the PS5, which I think is going to be phenomenal. I have was that the last topic you wanted to get off? Because I had a good one to kick off the show here.
Let's do it. Go ahead.
All right. So what's the deal with Joe Rogan? Why is everyone hating on Joe Rogan?
I don't know exactly. I didn't read the article, but supposedly he was spouting off like false COVID information
on his podcast.
Yeah. And Neil Young went and absolutely attacked him.
Yeah.
And was like, get his stuff off Spotify. Or no, I think Neil Young threatened to take his stuff off of Spotify if they continue to allow Joe Rogan to do that. Do his thing. And it's like, okay, he signed like $100 million contract. What is your contract with Spotify? Why don't you go ahead?
Pretty sure if they cut him without calls, they're going to have to still owe him that money. And he draws so many views, and they're just making him more popular by doing this. And it's his podcast. I mean, he can express his views and stuff. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. I mean, the media lies to us all the time, but we still watch, the news. We still watch, all this stuff. So it's like, why is that the hill you want to die on?
And, yeah, that's a good point. And not only that, but Joe Rogan is basically a podcast mogul at this point.
Yeah,
There's no
absolutely.
stopping this man. And he has such widespread support at this point. Yeah, exactly to your credit. Why is this the thing that you're willing to go to battle for when
Yeah.
I mean, you're going into World War III with a fucking musket, basically, in that situation.
And the crazy part is too, like, so, I talked to a lot of people about this, and they're saying, "Oh, it's political one way or another," but not really. I mean, he used to live in L.A. I do believe he was anti Republican when Trump was in office. I know that much. You know what I mean? So I don't understand why. I mean, he's being attacked the way he is. I don't get it.
I don't know. I could tell you this though. I happened to come across an episode of Fear Factor, and boy, has Joe Rogan changed as a human being, hasn't he? My goodness.
He's done just about everything. I mean, Fear Factor, and then he went to do the other thing. And
he was a commentator for the UFC for a long time. Still, I mean, he still practices jiu-jitsu and all that stuff. Teaches it to world-class guys that were winning belts and titles. I mean, he's teaching George St. Pierre how to kick properly and everything, which was the bread and butter for George St. Pierre. And kind of dating myself a little bit because GSP, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all those guys are previous generation. I couldn't tell you one fighter's name anymore. I used to watch that stuff a lot. Now I got so disconnected from it, and it sounds like
Kimbo
it's
Slice, and it's just because the name sounds cool as shit.
Yeah, Kimbo Slice. That was like the come up of YouTube when Kimbo Slice was just bare knuckle boxing people in his front yard or whatever and winning, commandingly. And then he went into the UFC, got his shit rocked commandingly, if that's a word, and that was the end of him. It was YouTube has a way of building up sensations only for them to get knocked down. I'm waiting for the Paul brothers to get knocked down a little bit. I'm tired of seeing them all the time. Hopefully that comes soon, but we'll see.
My last take on this whole topic, then we can move into what we were originally going on the plan. The wife just texted me, and I remember seeing this too. Someone put together a montage of all his videos of him saying a certain racial slur that we shouldn't say. And Joe Rogan came out and said, hey, it was out of context, that sort of thing. I honestly think we just need to eliminate said word entirely. So, I mean, he's wrong for saying it entirely, but I think everyone's wrong for saying something, of that nature. So, yeah, I can kind of see why they're getting upset then. I completely forgot about it before I asked the question. But, yeah, that's all I got for that.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, and I would tend to agree with you, and we'll actually talk about that a little bit when we get into our Hall of Fame conversation, which is probably going to chew up a vast majority of today's time, if I had to guess. So, as always,
it's the halfway mark at least.
Yeah, as after this, we're going right into it. So, as always, we rattled off a bunch of topics we want to cover today. If we don't get to them, we don't get to them. You know what I mean?
That's how it always works.
Tis what it is. And if you want to hear us talk about them, stick around because we usually hang on to the topics and talk about them if we haven't.
And if you're mad that we didn't talk about something, chime in. If you have some comments that even if they're against what we're talking about and they're challenging us, like throw it in there. We'll talk about it. We're not. If you have a difference of opinion, let's talk. Don't keep it bottled up. Just talk to us.
And that's just it. It's you almost have to live in this gray area a little bit where everything's not black and white. You have to see the other side. You have to kind of blend the views a little bit and understand where the opposition's coming from. And sometimes there's validity. Yeah, sometimes there's validity to it. Sometimes there isn't. I mean, but you don't know unless you have that conversation. Speaking of conversation, Steven Soderbergh calls out superhero movies. Hey, they ain't fucking. That's why these movies aren't great. They're good. They ain't great. Nobody's out there slapping cheeks. Weird take. Kind of agreeable. When we talk about where we are as the United States, as America, and this is, I doubt any other country has this saying, sex sells, right?
How
Go ahead.
how different has sex been perceived from when your parents were kids to when we were kids? Completely different.
Oh, for sure.
Like when our parents were kids, like even you see it when you talk to your parents, it's like, oh, you shouldn't say things like that and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You shouldn't talk about anything like that. But our generation is very open, like, all right, cool, and that, I don't know. I think it's a difference of a generational thing. And I think the generation after us, or I guess they're here. So, I mean, wow, that makes me seem really old. The generation that's here already, they're going to be more lax about it as well. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like, so you bring that up. Okay, we are more lax about it. Is that why we don't involve it in movies as much because it's not a big thing, or is this a situation where it's like we want to be able to, we don't want to use that like hook piece knowing it's going to work. Where's the challenge in that? Let's go ahead and do it without that. Let's really focus on. But I mean, you look at even just Marvel's history. There is a lot of relationships within the superhero realm. Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, which by the way, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, they banging it.
But that was when Netflix had it, so
yeah. Yeah, you can imagine that's going to go by the wayside. Obviously, once Disney Plus gets a hold of it, but that's just it. There are relationships like that, and we kind of touched on this a little bit with. Now we're finally starting to see the Peter Parker side of Tom Holland's Spider-Man and him really struggle. Relationships are a part of that. I don't want it to be a huge part of the story necessarily. That's not why I'm going to see the Spider-Man movie, but it does kind of pull at that thread of what his mentality is like, when he's got a serious relationship. And
I think Disney's biggest hang up with this is if they do something like that, they have to put an R rating on it, and they just won't. I mean, look at the successful things that have done something like that. Look at The Boys. Look at Invincible, which is a cartoon, but it's pretty rough. I mean, look at these other ones that, push those boundaries, which are okay to push now. I mean, but could you imagine a show like let's say even Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones in the 80s or 90s, right? It'd be seen as it'd be shown on Skinamax. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I think they're not gonna lose an audience for not having it. It's just they're not going to appeal more to certain generations.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. It's Marvel's doing exactly what they needed to do to succeed by giving their product to the widest range of audience they possibly can. That's their success. Whereas you talk about like The Boys and everything, the demographic is limited, or is it? I mean, how many 13-year-olds do you think are probably watching The Boys? I bet there's quite a few.
But how many 8-year-olds do you think are watching The Boys versus watching Endgame? Now, here's how they could get around it: not show the actual scene itself, but have like a heavy petting session, for lack of better terms, and cut it.
Yeah. Give them the shadow silhouette.
Yeah. Or release an unrated version, like later. Like release that later.
Wouldn't that be Disney's wheelhouse too? Because they love re-releasing that shit. I guarantee we'll see Spider-Man in theaters again here soon because it cracked the top 5 or top 6 for most highest grossing movie currently.
I think I've been saying this since we've started this podcast. Disney needs a Disney at dark.
Oh, absolutely.
Give me your darkest shows, and I guarantee it's going to boom. Disney at dark.
Yeah, and imagine what they do with Deadpool, what they do with Wolverine. Now, I will say Wolverine really finished strong. I'll give him that much with Logan and the how incredible that was as a movie. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, we're all searching for that carnage, which we've talked about. I mean, that seems to be human nature. Sex and carnage, give it to me, baby.
I mean, we've talked about it before. People people enjoy watching that stuff knowing it's not real. You know what I mean? Now, if you watch something real on the internet that's like carnage and like chaos and murdering that you know is real, then you get a real cringy feeling. But if it's fake, it's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Kraven the Hunter, it looks good. It looks good. This man has gotten jacked. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him recently, and he really filled the role of Quicksilver, but now he looks like an animal. And maybe this was just concept art that someone tricked me with, but dude looks shredded. I'm excited for it. Craven is, at least in the old like 90s Spider-Man cartoons, was a pretty pivotal villain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm excited to see that. You got your Green Goblin, you've got your Doc Ock, and maybe we're starting to see that Sinister Six thing kind of fill in here.
I saw a meme and it made me think of the old, and it was a thing for the old anime. It's like I miss the old animated Spider-Mans, and Spider-Man's up on the ceiling, and the villain's like, "Hey, why don't you come down here and fight me like a man?" And Spider-Man's like, "Hey, don't take it. There's any chance I could convince you to come up here and fight me like a spider, right?"
Right.
Like, yeah. But go on.
Hey, but if Kraven could, he would, man, because he's an absolute animal.
Make that like almost a more horror type movie. He's being hunted, or really heavy suspense. Like, give me that. I'd love that.
Or give me the original iteration of Punisher where he hunts Spider-Man. Give me that version.
Yep.
Oh, but keep John Bernthal, obviously. I'm excited. I mean, Russell Crowe, Aaron Taylor Johnson, two pretty well-known actors. So seems like they're starting to really. Everybody wants a piece of that Marvel pie now, don't they? I mean, we're talking about what's going to happen in Doctor Strange, and now that there's all these alternate universes, it's just like Tom Cruise was like, "What?" No, it's only speculation that he's going to be in the Doctor Strange movie, but come on. A lot of the speculation has come out to be true so far. I mean, we saw all three Spider-Men in the Spider-Man movie. We saw every villain we anticipated. With the exception, I would have liked to have seen Venom in it. We didn't get that. It is what it is.
It was a good setup, but it was just I wanted more. And I get it though, because you explained it right, that the other guy is also Venom, so it makes sense. I was like, all right. And kudos to you for calling out Ned being Hobgoblin.
Yeah, that does appear to be happening from some of the latest responses and news surrounding Marvel. Yeah, I also saw, I don't know if you caught a glimpse of this, it sounds like there's going to be a Venom verse that the three Spider-Man will be attempting to fight at some point. So maybe we see Venom, maybe we see Carnage. I forget, Toxin maybe I think is like the culmination, or I'd have to look it up again. I should have put the fucking article in here and I didn't. That's on me. But again, we reiterate this a lot. I'm excited for what Marvel's future is going to be. It seems like they're back on track for these are the ones we know kind of thing. We got Shang-Chi. Everybody was like, who the fuck is Shang-Chi?
Yeah.
Turned out to be excellent. Who gives a shit about the Eternals?
I enjoyed it, I think. But did you see James Gunn come out and say that this is the last time we're going to see all the Guardians of the Galaxy together?
Yes, I did see that. Yep.
Right now, who do you think dies?
Oof.
Because Thor's not with him because he's going to be in Love and Thunder, so he's probably going to split away from that because that comes out before.
Mm-hmm. Just for the sheer fact that he will probably have other movies coming up, I say Quill. I say Quill's gone.
That hurts. I think David Bautista is probably gone. I think Bautista,
that was going to be my initial guess because he's a fan. He is a huge fan favorite, by the way. Just the way Bautista plays the character of Drax is very comical, and you really have to enjoy it. So yeah, maybe you're right, but that's the thing is they need to do those drastic things.
Yeah,
they need to.
Yep.
I mean, look at the success of Game of Thrones. Why was it so successful? Any character you liked was fucking Dead.
Immediately.
Dead.
Dead.
Absolutely dead. Yeah. You said Ned Stark, season 1. Man, this is gonna be a great show. I like this Ned guy. He's gonna do
Yeah,
a
he's
lot of good
awesome.
for the realm.
Up until he got his head cut off, I completely believed he was going to be saved. All the way up until I saw his head roll, and I'm like, this is a dream, right? No fucking way. And then it ended, and I'm like, what the fuck did I just see?
Up until Joffrey gives that little speech, my mother and my soon-to-be bride have asked for mercy. But mercy's for women or some shit like
Yeah.
that. And then he said, fucking off with his head. Old boy takes that massive sword and just... And then they end the episode. Beautifully done cinematically. Just dead silence. Birds fly away, and there's just dead silence.
I do wish I didn't listen to the books about how Joffrey died, because I think just watching that and not anticipating it, it would have been so much more impactful. Because I already knew it was going to happen, because it's the same way in the books. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is the moment. And I'm like, oh, I probably would have enjoyed this so much more if I just didn't read those damn books. Listen, reading's hard.
Reading is hard.
Yeah.
Reading is hard. You know what else is hard? Snowboarding. Fucking OG Olympic redhead returns. 35 years old. This man's taking it to the half pipes and doing it again. If he wins a gold medal, that's just fantastic. I follow him on TikTok, and his TikToks are so simple. It's literally just him watching like snowboarding or skiing videos, and either laughing when somebody absolutely eats shit, or just being like, "Oh, okay, good job," kind of deal. And I'm there. I don't know why. I get sucked in every time. I'm there for it. But I mean, he's been an icon for so long. And this is the Shaun White that used to have long ass, wavy red hair, absolutely crushing it in the Olympics, crushing it in the X Games. And we all took it for granted. Yeah. And then it was like, hang on, wait a minute. Shaun White is still an athlete. Here he is doing it at age 35.
I was talking to this I think is my wife's celebrity crush. You know, as guys, we all have one. We all have one. But I think this is it, because she had so many facts about Shaun White, and she was talking about how he actually he brought the sport kind of to relevance in the U.S. at least, to where we started caring about it, and he just started doing things that no one had ever done. So I think the fact that he qualified too, I mean, it's phenomenal. Think about it, in our lifetime, how many great Olympic athletes have we seen? I mean, you have tennis. Is that an Olympic thing?
I don't think it is.
Well, okay. All right. But anyhow, so you have Michael Phelps, you have Usain Bolt, you have Shaun White. Like, you just have all these like phenomenal world-class athletes. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, you certainly have to appreciate it. And I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. Now that there is TikTok and social media is so well expanded, do you like the behind the scenes stuff? Like, all the athletes on TikTok are showing all the gear and all the fits that they have. I'm kind of torn, because I don't want to believe these people walk amongst us just because of their capabilities as human beings. Yeah. And how excited they are that they got like, oh, look at this USA pullover. And I was like, I could go online and probably buy that same fucking thing. I think now.
Like, if you're not like one of those top ones, I think you're pretty drastically underpaid from what I've been able to see. Like, compared to how like regular athletes are paid in like sporting events here in the US, like I think it's drastically. But oh shit, where was I going for this? Oh yeah, no, I'm all for that. I'm all for the behind the scenes access, that sort of like seeing behind the scenes, and it's cool. You know, they kind of get their moment to shine. I think that's what social media has done for them. It's gave them more of a platform as well. Probably helps with their income too, because I mean, they're not getting paid much there. They're getting paid a lot on social media for doing these things. The one thing I did hate, we were watching the women's, I think it was the high air, I want to say, and this U.S. Olympic skier or snowboarder, one of the two. She had failed her first event, didn't even get a chance to put a score because she fell. The second event, she did the same thing. She has one more event, and the first thing they did was stick a camera in her face. And she's like crying and holding back tears. And they're asking her questions like, How does that make you feel? It's like, what the fuck you think it makes her feel? Like, you know what? Chill out with that.
Makes me feel like doo-doo. What did you expect me to say?
Chill out with that a little bit.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, it's one of those things where now anybody with a phone or like a mobile recorder comes up to you and they're just like, "Hey, tell us all about, and they just put it right in your face, so you got to deal with it.
Hit them over the head with a. This was like a professional news team too that was doing it.
And here's the kicker about all this too: a lot of these people in the Olympics, 17, 18, 22, young.
16 figure skater we watched the other day that was just phenomenal. I take back everything I said about the Olympics. I'm highly enjoying watching them. Like
I am too. Hey, like, curling, man.
I didn't watch any curling. I didn't do that. Didn't do any of that. Mostly the figure skating, the doubles and figure skating, and then the high air, and then the half pike for the snowboarding. But the men's snowboarding came on at like 12:30 last night, so we have no.
Yeah. You got to watch the re-air of it, which I don't know. Yeah,
bastards.
NBC Sports app. Shout out to Cowboy because I've been riding his Spectrum account left and right, man. I'm pretty sure he knows it. I hope he does.
I don't think he does.
He let me use it for something. I don't remember what it was, and I was like, "Hey, let's see what other shit I can log into with this." That's the only reason I've been able to watch football games because Sling TV doesn't host CBS, doesn't host Fox, so everything you possibly need. But they promote the sports package, be able to watch live games, and you could watch college football, sure.
Yeah, but you watch 2 live football games. You can't watch them all though.
Right. So yeah, they big old dump on that one. But it's cheaper than all the rest too. So
yeah, I'm starting to realize that I think I might be paying more in subscriptions than I ever paid for cable. When is someone going to come out with a package deal to where it's like you get these 10 subscriptions for $110 a month?
Well, that's what Spectrum's doing. You log into your TV. You log into your TV provider.
Yeah,
and you get access to a lot of that stuff.
Oh wow! Huh.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Oh yeah.
Just wait till Disney gets Sunday ticket. It won't come with the regular Disney price though. It'll be Disney Plus exclusive, which is $800 for the year.
Yeah. And guess what? There's going to be a lot of schmucks out there paying for it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know. But so let's parlay this right into the conversation I really wanted to get into today. And
by the way, speaking of parlays, did you see that guy that put $20 down on the Bengals and the Rams, their exact score, right? Put $20 down, won $575,000.
Seriously?
Because he picked the exact score, and the Bengals were such underdogs too that it just skyrocketed it. I'm like, best $20 you ever spent.
No kidding. Good for him. Hey, invest that shit, turn that into a couple mil, and call it good.
Yeah. Pay good, live good. Live good, die good.
All right, let's talk about it. I listened to an ESPN Daily podcast yesterday talking about Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens missed their mark to make it into the Hall of Fame, so they no longer can make it into the Hall of Fame, right? 2 known cheaters in the sport of baseball. But Jeff Passan, who is a baseball writer for ESPN, I believe, he might be his own independent thing, goes on to talk about, okay, so what about the guys who were like known racists or female abusers and everything that are currently in the Hall of Fame? What do you do about those people? It says that character is supposed to be a point of getting into the Hall of Fame. So at what point can you look back and say their contribution to baseball is worthless because of those character traits? So now we should eliminate them from the Hall of Fame? Or is this something Okay, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, again, known cheaters. They took performance-enhancing drugs. Did they only get there because of that?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you separate the player and their accomplishments with what they had to do to get there?
I think now I just thought of this right off the top of my head. So this is really good hot take here. I think because you also have this is kind of off topic here. No, it's on topic. But like the Hall of Fame, I mean, people say Ben Roethlisberger is a hands down Hall of Famer, right? Well, he allegedly also raped 2 women too. So if you put him in the Hall of Fame, what are you saying to everyone else? I think those are 2 separate instances. You know what I mean? I think if you have allegations like that, or you get proved that you're that poor of a human being, you should just be eliminated entirely. But if you're caught cheating, I think I have a way to fix that. Because when they were cheating, they probably got retested at some point, correct? To where they were okay to play.
Mm-hmm.
You take out in between all the stats in between that, and then you tell me, okay, now are they able to still make it according to their stats? Because let's face it, the Hall of Fame isn't about changing baseball, changing football, anything like that. The Hall of Fame is a numbers game, and it's a popularity contest. Like, that's what it's turned into. I don't know so much about baseball if it's turned into that, but football, it most certainly has. I mean, you have players like people are, deciding if Phillip Rivers deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and what did he really do for football? You know what I mean? Like, why is that a big accomplishment? I don't know.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting too, because Jeff Passan, he has a Hall of Fame vote, and he looks at 2 things. Did you have outstanding numbers, and did you have outstanding numbers for a long period of time? It's not one thing to just have like these breakout seasons. It's like you did this over the course of your career. Now with guys that took PEDs, when did that start? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
would they have been able to accomplish it without the PEDs? It's so hard to say, because a lot of that. I mean, Barry Bonds was an incredible player. He was real fast. He could hit the piss out of the ball, and he had all the physical attributes to be successful in the MLB even before he started taking PEDs and steroids. So why do it? 1, and 2, how do we say he could have been capable of it without the PEDs?
See, this is one of the things too. Like, I think we should educate every single player, educate them on PEDs and the detrimental effects they have. If they want to take them, go ahead. I mean, that's on you then. You know what I mean? That's on you. If you want to take these to get a few years in glory to shave 20 years off your life, that's on you. I don't know why that has to be.
And that's it too. And that's it too. Is, well, I mean, then you have to talk about the health risks from a league standard as a whole. Hey, you could put yourself at risk, but I'm now that I'm not necessarily condoning it, but green lighting it. Do you hold some responsibility in that when something does go wrong?
Well, I mean, it's on them because you educated them to the point. Like, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just throwing ideas out here that maybe that's the way they deal with it. I have no idea. There's no way to catch everyone all the time. End of story. Because you'd have to test everyone. Tests can get expensive, and it would just be crazy. And guess what? What is it? An oil change? You know what? You just put a catheter in, swap your urine out for something else, and go. All right. And some players are going to do that. So I mean, there's got to be a way to do something along those lines to where you can level the playing field or do something. But yeah, I don't know how they handle it. I think there's one particular instance that's kind of weird that they're not in the Hall of Fame, and that'd be Pete Rose. But Pete
Rose, yeah.
Like, it's so weird that that's the reason that he's not in, and they put him in with all these the PED, with all the actual cheaters, and you're like, how is that the same thing? I don't know. We need like a classification or something.
And this is something he did as a manager, not even as a player. As a manager, he was betting on games, not as a player.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe he does take a pitcher out earlier than he needs to so he can cover some sort of spread, whatever. And
put him in as a player and not as a manager.
Right. Exactly. I've never understood that one. And I think Pete Rose at this point has come to that realization to where it's like, okay, it is what it is. And he does broadcasting for MLB, which is so weird. Like they're holding him so close to the chest, and it's like, if I was Pete Rose, I'd be like, fuck you. This is the same organization as a whole that told me I couldn't get into the Hall of Fame because of my physical accomplishments, because I bet on games as a manager.
First thing about that is I think he's A-okay, because I don't think you get jack shit for being in the Hall of Fame except for saying you were in the Hall of Fame. So he's probably making all sorts of money from the MLB at this point, and broadcasting, doing whatever he's doing. And but I forget what my second thought was. It was there. I'll come back to it. I'll circle back.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Pete, because I mean, really, that's the one that is so highlighted, and there may be others, but it's good.
Oh, okay. I was listening to a podcast, and apparently the guy who said that he would never be in the Hall of Fame and banned him from that or whatever, he's still alive. And there was discussion on a podcast I was listening to, and it said something along the lines of, once that guy dies, potentially the MLB could just be like, yeah, you're in, you're good.
Honestly,
I have no idea. But
honestly, though, and that was the other thing too. Is, I mean, it has to be a vote based on character at that point, and that seems to be, like you said, it's a popularity contest almost, to where that's the contemplation they have by the end of that ESPN Daily podcast that I was listening to is, who do you give the votes to then? Currently, it's with the writers. You can't really give it to the players, because then guess what? Everybody's getting it. Hey, that guy had a great season. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Hey, that guy had a great season. Put him in the Hall of Fame, kind of thing. And it's one of those things where I don't think we have a good answer for it. And there's no. But I mean, you can even liken this to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
There's just as many people that shouldn't be there based on. Again, your Phillip Rivers example is an excellent one. Jay-Z is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Phillip Rivers, like, what did they contribute to that?
And that's why I think the Hall of Fame is really watered down, because, I mean, if you didn't change away, like, you know, if you didn't break records, change the way the game's played, you know, break, you know, color barriers, stuff like that, like, okay, so you put up good stats and you were good for a while. Did you change did teams have to come up with a different way to, you know, approach you as a player, you know, on the opposing team? Or did you come up with like a different pitch, or were you this crazy, you know, dual threat quarterback? Like what way did you contribute to the game? And I don't know. I feel like it's watered down. It's a stats and popularity contest. That's
absolutely. And this is just such a recent example that I can think of, because I just watched a video of it like a day or two ago. Ed Reed, okay, one of the most dynamic safeties that ever played football, had Peyton Manning in the palm of his hands, and we're watching a video. So, and Peyton Manning revered as arguably one of the smartest quarterbacks of our generation. You know, you got Tom Brady, you got Peyton Manning. Like, those are the two. Joey B. Maybe if there's ever a quarterback with the most swag, it's Joe Burrow. If Joey B gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, his character will be looked at as one of massive beans between his legs. Just an absolute stud. But now you got me off track. Ed Reed, okay? Watching this video, Ed Reed was so smart. He knew what Peyton Manning was going to do, to the point where he made it appear as though he was going to be covering the middle of the field. So he's doing his little back pedal, tracking the center of the field. He knows that's going to leave a guy on the outside open for Peyton Manning. So he baits him with that move, going to the middle of the field. And then, without even second guessing, turns and sprints to catch that receiver that's on the outside to pick the ball off. Like, that's the kind of thing that puts you in the Hall of Fame.
Your average play is something that you can put on an instructional video and say, this is exactly perfectly how you do it. And you show that to younger generations and they're like, wow, that's phenomenal. that you should be in the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like I mean, look at Aaron Donald. You know, no one usually gets through double teams. I think he's got like a 50% win rate against double teams. So teams have to use almost 3 guys to block him. So he's going to get into the Hall of Fame, you know, and I don't know, it's crazy.
And it's interesting, but okay, so you can take a player that's somewhat similar, like JJ Watt. I mean, he was incredibly dominant in the early stages of his career, but he never had the longevity. He was every other season he seemed to be hurt. So although he accomplished a lot of these great things, is he Hall of Fame worthy? I mean, his numbers are probably similar to those of some of the great defensive ends, but is he Hall of Fame worthy?
Under the current, like how we treat Hall of Fame. I mean, yeah. I mean, look at the MVP award. I don't know. It's probably the same with baseball. MVP is a stat award, not a truly most valuable player award. You know what I mean? So I think both are just watered down. And Colin Cowherd, I was listening to him today, and he was saying, he's like, how small is that MVP award going to look when Aaron Rodgers wins it and he got kicked out of the playoffs in the first round? Like, can you honestly say he's the most valuable player in the league? And he's like, no, you can't. If Aaron Donald goes out and sacks Joe Burrow 10 times this year, you've got to say this week, he's probably the most valuable player on that team.
Very possible that happens. Right? By the way, with the way the Titans were able to just kind of go through those Swiss cheese holes you guys were leaving in the middle of the field. But yeah, that's exactly it. And I don't know. It's something I don't think we can ever really get right.
No, I don't think so.
And here's my other question too. So how often are Hall of Famers dampened by the small market that they might play in?
Yeah.
You know, there could be incredible pitchers, first basemen, quarterbacks, whatever. I mean, if Joe Burrow hadn't put himself in the spotlight and still had those numbers, but let's say they don't win the playoff games, but he's throwing for 400 or 500 yards a game, multiple touchdowns a game. And with him being in a small market, would he be looked at all? Probably not. He could he could be the regular season leader in any one of those categories. But again, Aaron Rodgers, same way. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? Now, Aaron Rodgers does have a Super Bowl under his belt, but is that enough anymore? You know what I mean? It's so tough to figure out where that cutoff is. It's so okay. Yeah, let's say he wins a lot of Super Bowls. Okay, great. The team around him was built up, right? Now, let's say he's such this incredible player, but he's got a dog shit offensive line, or the defense can't stop anybody. And as a byproduct of that, either they don't win a lot of games, even though they're putting up numbers, or what. How do you look at that person who is doing everything they possibly can to make that franchise successful, but not get to the big game, not win the big game? It's just so tough to be like, yeah, they should be able to put it all on their shoulders and be successful. There's 53 men on a roster. How could you possibly say that?
I think this might be a good example. Take out the character stuff. Take out his problems with the law. All right. I mean, he's never going to make the Hall of Fame, but take out all that. Say he was he had outstanding character and everything like that. Michael Vick, how much did he change how we looked at quarterbacks? You know what I mean? Like that alone, and how well he performed in doing that should get him into the Hall of Fame. But how it's based, and since he had the dogfighting, and clearly that throws him out. I mean, that should. But say he was still clean slate and everything like that. The fact that he changed the game like that is how I think the Hall of Fame should be looked at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the thing is, outside of the rushing yards, statistically as a quarterback, he was good.
Yeah.
He wasn't great.
Yeah, he wasn't spectacular. Right.
But
it was the first time we saw something like that.
Yeah, and he paved the way for guys like the Kyler Murrays, the
Lamar
Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, yeah. And you're absolutely right. To where, I mean, colleges have almost solely adapted that style of play anymore. where they have the mobile quarterback.
Yeah. Yep.
Very rarely do you see guys that are pocket passers, you know? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Joe Burrow being a prime example of that. Now, old Joey Scoots can get out there if he needs to sometimes.
Joey Business, baby.
Joey Business lights a fire under those feet from time to time, and you have to as a quarterback. I mean, hell, even guys like Ryan Tannehill or Ryan Tannehill has actually got some legs on him. Oh, he can move pretty decent.
Well, let's say this. Let's say Tom Brady went to the same amount of championship games, but he never won the Super Bowl, right? But everything else in his career was the same. He just didn't win the Super Bowls. He would still be, like, in my eyes, he would still be a Hall of Famer for the fact that he just showed that quarterbacks can play till they're 45. Like, that's phenomenal. You know what I mean? And at a high level, you're like, okay, yeah. You know, it's not like he went out there and sucked the wind. Like, even if you take away his championships and they were just AFC title games, NFC title games, he made it that far. Like, it's still, you know what I mean? I mean, he's clearly in, but I mean,
yeah. Do they even have to wait for the retirement period? Just put him in. Let's not do this song and dance, okay?
Well, but Calvin Johnson was he was worried about not getting in too because he cut his career short. But he changed the way we look at wide receivers. He got in, I do believe, but
and okay, so let's see again. There's so much argument to be had. Let's talk about Julio Jones. Julio Jones at the very beginning of his career, super dominant. Oh, he's good.
Yeah.
AJ Green. I mean, he really fell off, but he had a lot of great seasons. Where do you cap that? Everybody has to decline at some point, right? I mean, apparently not, because Tom Brady is showcasing that. Now, he's not taking the hits like the receivers are necessarily, but at
no
what point
quarterback has played at that level at that age, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Peyton Manning. Everybody thought Peyton Manning was going to be in football until he died. I don't know what age Peyton retired at, but a lot earlier than Tom Brady.
You think Frank Gore gets in?
God, I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so too.
You know what?
Especially when you're looking at a running back status and the fact that a running back typically lasts 3 to 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Successfully, and he's been in the league. I watched this video where he was sitting down with one of his current teammates, I believe, and his teammate was rattling off all of these like veterans. Some have been out of the league for a little while now. Some have been out of the league for a long time now. Some are still in the league. And he was rattling off all these guys, and Frank Gore was supposed to say either he played with them or not. Like if they were still were in the league when he was playing. And this was guys that were like Warren Sapp, like the names he was listing off.
Yeah.
And Frank Gore would be like, yeah, I played with him. He was, back when I was on such and such team or whatever. And it's just unbelievable the longevity that Frank Gore has had in a career that is almost supposed to be cut short due to the wear and tear.
Nature of
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so yeah, I mean, you have to take that into consideration. You absolutely have to. I don't know that we'll ever see a running back do anything like that. MJD, Maurice Jones-Drew, I mean, he had a long career as well, but is it
AP was close, I want to say, but yeah, like AP, was there a more fun player to watch in our generation growing up than AP? Like when you'd get the ball, like he just make people miss, like that sort of thing. Like that's Hall of Fame worthy. You know what I mean? Like,
but because he whips the fuck out of his kid, that's you really can't do that, bud.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but again, like, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about it, honestly.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those things where he was so beloved when he came into the league. Yeah, Walter Payton's a given, absolute stud workhorse.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, pause.
Watching him on black and white on the old school TVs,
on the SpectraVision or whatever the TVs were called back
in the box TVs that are about 400 pounds.
Yeah, the tube TVs. But Adrian Peterson was so beloved because of the standard he set. I mean, he broke records. What was it? Single season rushing yards, I believe he broke, or he came
Mhm.
close. I don't know if he broke it, but he was close. Multiple
Oh,
occasions.
he was like, I think he was like 3 yards away. He's flipping you off, dude.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. We just told him that he's old, but I mean, that's what we're
Why?
talking about here. We're
Why?
talking about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk about
The weather.
longevity and yeah. Um, but again, it goes back to that popularity contest thing where people have kind of lost sight of people were super up in arms about AP and
Mhm.
his relationship with his kid or kids, and now it's just kind of like, you know what, AP, what a story. He was so dominant for so long, had these pretty bad injuries, and now he's still scoring touchdowns here
Do,
and there in the
do
NFL.
you ever think we're gonna go to from a opinion based Hall of Fame to a checklist Hall of Fame?
I
Is
hope
there a
not.
more fair way to do it? Like, do you think a checklist Hall of Fame is more better than opinionated?
But but then the opinion, it's still going to be opinion based at the root cause, because then we say, all right, anything over this statistic is
Mhm.
what we would consider Hall of Fame worthy. So
Mhm.
there's still going to have to be a collection of people that come up with
Oh
those
no, no, no!
numbers.
I'm saying if you hit those marks, you're in.
That right, right. But somebody has to create those marks.
Right, right. No, I agree with that. But I mean,
I don't know. I hope not,
yeah.
because the guys like the Frank Gores or the guys that
Mhm.
change the game but don't have the stats necessarily
Mhm.
are ones that are noteworthy.
Yeah.
I mean, where, like you said, where would we be without Mike Vick running all over people?
He was the first quarterback to hit 1,000 yards or something like that, or something crazy. And at the time, you're like, "Wow!" Now you're seeing Lamar Jackson lead the league in rushing, and you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's whatever."
Yeah, yeah. If not lead the lead his team in rushing,
Yeah.
and that first of all, that should not be the case. Um, but yeah, I mean, say Mike Vick never existed, does Lamar Jackson get a fair chance? Probably not.
Probably not. And that's why if you take out the dogfighting stuff, like that's a Hall of Fame caliber individual. But I mean, he was a dirtbag and when decided to fight dogs. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah, he did do a
you know
lot of
what?
bad shit, but
And that's the thing that drives me nuts about sports too. Is they're so quick. These people that beat women, potential sexual assault charges, that sort of thing. They just let them back in. Like, oh yeah, but we care about people. I'm like, no, you don't. You just care about money. Get out of here. Don't. I'm okay with you bringing them back or doing whatever, but don't try to lie to me about it. Okay, you don't give a shit.
yeah, exactly. And let's take this. So, um, the movie is called The Home Team, and it's Sean Payton's story.
I saw that.
It's terrible.
I I I enjoyed it for what it was, but when Kevin James starts to talk technical football, I cringe every time. Like, oh yeah, you should blitz the safety. I'm like, just shut up, King of Queens.
So there was a whole thing about him, not maybe not necessarily him. I don't know the actual story, but the bounty gate,
Hmm.
right? He was putting bounties on guys' heads and paying out to the players for
Right.
doing so.
I don't know if
One
that was.
season, one season later, he's back in the NFL.
I'm curious to see if now I think that was a thing entirely because you have Bart Scott earlier this season talking about holding how the Ravens are going to tackle Burrow's arm so that his head bounces off the ground and so that he gets injured and can't support himself. Like it's absurd. You haven't seen him on there in a long time because of it. But anyhow, I don't know in Sean Payton's case, was he the one that did it or was he the fall guy because they can't suspend an owner for it because, well, he owns the team.
Yeah, probably the case if I had
Like,
to guess, honestly.
I'm sure he knew it was going on, but at the same time, like, I'm just curious to see how deep that goes. In 20 years, we'll probably find out.
And I think that's the root of the conversation in that movie
Yeah.
is, it's more complicated than
Yeah.
that.
I was
And
just thinking that, like, they play it off like,
Stephen A. They have a little clip of Stephen A. Smith saying, "Hey, if you knew about it and didn't do anything, then you didn't do anything." Like,
I mean, look at
then,
Joe Paterno.
yeah,
Great example of that. Like he
Yeah.
got all his shit stripped because of that. So I mean,
I don't know. I don't think we solved it today, but we're gonna wrap it up there for today, anyways. It's something, like I said, is going to be a continual conversation for years and
absolutely.
years to come. And we'll just kind of have to watch it unfold. Maybe they do go to a checklist thing. But again, there's going to have to be a committee that comes up with an arbitrary set of numbers or statistics. And how many of those do you have to hit to be considered in the Hall of Fame? And then at some point, you got to think it might become overcrowded, really, like to where, all right, this becomes a passing league. All right, guys are throwing tens of thousands of yards in a season, and it doesn't hold the same value anymore. And so you have to do you rewrite that checklist? Because
you'd have to adjust for the times, because passing yards back in the day they're getting crushed nowadays by everyone. So it's like, and just want to thank Papa Steele for chiming in the comments. Whoever the other individual was, you can kindly just fuck right off. And other than that, friends,
thank you guys for watching. Thank you for everybody who chimed in, just as Rod said. And as always, from us to you, cheers.